So I'm just going to go in the order that I see people. And speaking of many hats, I see Ayesha here for Dance Till Dawn. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about your film and what inspired it.
Sure. So I'm Ayesha Adamo. I'm here with Dance Till Dawn, which is a combination short film music video. And it takes place in 1919 in a world similar to the Ziegfeld Midnight Frolic, which was like the after party of the Ziegfeld Follies. And it follows performers through their lives on stage and off stage. It has very glittery dancing and some interesting stuff going on.
Absolutely. And what were some of the hats that you wore, Ayesha?
So in doing this, I was the actor and recording artist and the songwriter of the song, but I was also the writer of the, the script, the screenplay, as well as the choreographer, and I made the costumes too.
Yes. I mean, I kept saying your name, but I love that. I love that. And it was for all of you who may not have seen it, it's just a stunningly beautiful piece of work. Oh, it's just really beautiful, lovely, beautifully filmed, lovely color palette. I mean, really everything about the look was just wonderful. And that's just talking about the look. The music is another thing that we're going to be able to talk about. Thank you, Ayesha.
Yeah.
And now I see next Matt for Lessons on Fade and Falling. Go ahead, Matt, and tell us a little bit about your film and what inspired it.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Matt Jenkins, and I'm the director, writer, and producer of the feature documentary film Lessons on Fate and Falling. And that tells a true story of teacher and father Adam Wright, who fell 6 stories into the Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Forest in Colorado and miraculously survived the event. 2 rafters just happened to be rafting by on the Gunnison River in December, which never happens. They just happened to be EMT first responders, and they just happened to know somebody else who had tried to save somebody. And so they knew where to pilot Adam through the Whitewater Rapids in December, knew where to ground the raft so that the medevac helicopter could lift him out. And Adam broke both arms, broke his leg, caved his face in, and in 2.5 months later, he was back in the classroom teaching again. So it was a pretty miraculous, inspiring story. He talked about, dying on the floor of the Black Canyon next to the river. And like in his last, what he thought was going to be his last moments, he thought about his 3 young boys. And that's what just kept him going, was to make sure that his sons didn't have to go through life without a father. And about that same time, 2 guys just happened to raft by and be EMT emergency responders. And so it was several different miracles that converged. My inspiration for the film was Adam is a close friend of mine, and we both were English teachers at Montrose High School. Adam's classroom was right next to my classroom. And so we were neighbors in that regard. We would always get beers, on Friday afternoon for Friday afternoon club, blowing off steam. And we were sitting on a Friday having beers at like 4:30. And Adam said, I had one of my high school students ask me in class today if I believed in life after death. And, that sometimes happens when you're a teacher. And so he, briefly explored that topic with the kid and then tried to get back on the novel they were teaching. And then 48 hours later, Adam was dying at the bottom of the Black Canyon. He was about to get his answer. And so when I heard that had happened, I just thought, oh my God, we were talking 2 days ago about life after death, and Adam just fell 6 stories. And so as he went through physical therapy and rehabilitation, and finally months later was able to come back to that same spot where we had beers, I just said, man, we got to tell this story. We've got to make this documentary. And so he eventually agreed, and we get to tell the story.
Yeah. And let me ask you, it's an extraordinary piece, which has all those elements that you've been talking about. And when I ask other questions, I will delve a little bit deeper, although you covered a lot of the wonderful material that's in there. So was this your first filmmaking experience?
This was my first feature. I wrote and produced a short documentary film called Of Apples and Anthracite that documents different generations in Paonia, Colorado, and the different economies and the coal mines drying up and the city's trying to figure out how it's going to move forward. So that was a short documentary film, and this is my second film.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I wondered about whether this was a brand new endeavor for you or not.
Yes,
thank you so much, Matt.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. And so now I'm looking at Nora and Rami. It is pronounced Rami. Am I being correct in my pronunciation? I always
totally
check.
Correct.
Totally correct. And oh wait, now I'm going to really try something. I'm going to try your last name.
Go ahead.
Rami Kode.
Wow. That's impressive.
I did it right?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm astounded. I come from a language background. My master's was in Romance, linguistics, and literature. So I am always fascinated with pronunciations, accents, languages, etc. But that was a shot in the dark. I'm glad I pulled it off. All right. Well, your film, I saw your film before Breckenridge because I saw it at the Topaz Festival, which I was also in. So, and I believe I saw you guys interviewed for a Q&A for it. So, but these folks here haven't, or if they have seen it, it's their first time most likely. So again, same question. Tell us your names again, the film, and what inspired it.
I'm Rami Kode. I'm the director and the editor of Alina. And here's my wife, Nora Mariana. She's the writer and producer of Alina. And she came up with the idea of the film, so I'll let her take the lead on that. Yeah.
Well, Alina is about a girl gang in the Warsaw Ghetto during World War II. And it's about their attempts to save a 3-month-old baby before the Nazis abduct her. So it's really about the separation of children from their parents during Nazi-occupied Poland and what these women were able to do. And it was inspired by real women who performed these amazingly heroic acts. Specifically in the Warsaw Ghetto, we had heard about historical figures like Oskar Schindler, of course, but we were amazed by a lot of unsung heroes. A lot of them were teachers, grandmas, nuns, social workers, just regular folk who didn't have much money or political connections but were able to save collectively 2,500 children. And we found that so inspiring and very resonant with just the climate that we're in right now in the world, just the power of just regular people. And how an act of love can be the greatest form of resistance against hate. So that was really the inspiration for the film.
Yeah,
that's lovely. Thank you so much. And now I see Ben, and so you're gonna have to tell me along with everyone else what your film is about. I mean, I know essentially what it's about, but please again, your name and the title of the film and your inspiration.
Sure. Yeah,
a sentence about it and your inspiration.
Absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Ben Proudfoot, and I directed and produced The Lost Astronaut. The film is a profile of a man named Ed Dwight Jr., who was said to be the first African-American astronaut in the middle 1960s. And it's a fascinating story, first-person narrative, short documentary that just takes us into his experience of what that was like and what he was up against in this fascinating moment when the space race and the civil rights movement kind of collided in one man. And then really I was flabbergasted by his second act, which was to become an amazing monument sculptor and memorial artist, mostly for African-American heroes. And it was what inspired it was we are doing a series with the New York Times called Almost Famous about people who if history had gone slightly differently, they might well be household names. And his name came up in the casting process, and I just couldn't believe his story, and I had to go to Denver, Colorado, and ask him all kinds of questions. So that was the inspiration.
Fabulous. Oh, yes. Well, I do still actually want you to send me the link.
I will. I'll do it right now.
Because even after our chat, I really have a desire to see that film. So please do so. So going back to my gallery view. So now I see, okay, I'm going to try your name, Isabel. So first of all, you have to tell me what is the nationality of your last name? That'll give me a clue. It looks like it's Hispanic, but I'm not entirely sure.
It's Italian.
Oh, then I know how to pronounce it. It's Isabel Aurichio.
Yes, very nice.
CH in Italian is a hard C. Any rate. Yes, I'm showing off. I'm so sorry. Okay, so Isabel, talk to us about Splintered. And it is interesting because the characters in Splintered actually did look like, to me, they looked like either they were Native Americans or they were Latino origin. Is just out of curiosity, were they either of those?
Edgar, the actor that plays Isaac, his parents are both from Mexico, and then Arthur, who plays Henry, is of Armenian descent.
Okay, that was interesting because it made me, yeah, I felt that there was at least an Indian, as in Native American or Native South American feel, but yes, that they both looked like they were of that heritage. But at any rate, same old. Tell us your name again, your film, what you did on it, because some of you are forgetting to say that, and what inspired you.
Sure. So my name is Isabel Aurichio. I was the director and writer of Splintered. So this film follows 3 middle school boys, Jacob, Isaac, and Henry, as they sort of navigate the collision of their old friendships, budding masculinity, and a desire to fit in. So this film actually was my senior thesis project. I just graduated from Colorado College. Thanks.
Well done.
And so my collaborator and I, my partner, Brent, Jacoby, who was the cinematographer and editor on the project, we were both really interested in pinpointing moments from our own childhood that were really key in the formation of our own identities. And so this project just sort of grew out of that, and the characters grew out of that. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And moving to Joel Sandvos, is it?
Yeah, sure.
Great. So Tending Clouds. I'll tell you, we have a batch of films here that, I mean, we have a couple of lighter things, but we have some really, not dark per se, but films about life-threatening, about life and death, about, I mean, really deep subject matter, and yours fits in that category as well. So tell us your name, the film, what you did on it, and what inspired you.
All right. Well, I'm Joel Sandvos. I'm the director, co-producer, and cinematographer, one of the cinematographers and editor of Tending Clouds, which is a short doc on a young woman who was, she's a survivor of child sex trafficking in Cambodia, now 23, and back in Cambodia. She lived in America for most of her youth, and now she's just dealing with going back and helping people, and also with a retrial of her childhood abuser and having to testify a second time against him. So yeah.
And it was a gripping film. It really was. And what this woman went through, but also how she rose above it, was extraordinary. So Thank you so much, Joel. I really appreciate that. And moving again to a life and death story, we're looking at Sara for Little But Fierce. Talk to us. Tell us again, name, what inspired you, a little bit about the film and your role on it.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Sara. I'm in Washington, D.C. My film was about a little girl, Madison Davis, who was battling a rare form of brain cancer, and her mom, who's an ER nurse, was using cannabis to help, among many other drugs, to help treat her pain and seizures. And it was a documentary. I followed them around for a little over a year and a half. I actually found them, I was down there teaching at Old Dominion University and found them through a friend who was working for the regional chapter of Normal down there. And I did the entire film myself. It's a short, it's about 30 minutes. I did the whole thing myself. It was also my thesis project for my MFA program this past year. And yeah, I feel like, I mean, Matt and Joel, as documentary filmmakers, you probably, like, as soon as you tell people you're a documentary filmmaker, I feel like everyone's like, oh, I have a great idea for you. I'm like, that's a great idea. You should definitely make that film.
Yeah, you should do it yourself.
Right? That's a great idea.
I get that as a narrative filmmaker too. It's not just the doc filmmaker.
Okay, that's good to know, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it, like, their picture popped up on Facebook, and I was like, oh, I feel like that's the story I need to tell. So I reached out to my friend, was like, I didn't even ask about them specifically. He was doing kind of a Humans of New York series. And I was like, hey, do you have any good stories for me? And he's like, actually, you need to meet this family. And I come from more of a news magazine background. So I thought I was just going to go and shoot for a couple weeks and tell a quick little 5-minute piece. And then, 18 months later, I'm like, oh my God, documentary filmmaking is so hard. But so yeah, that was my story.
Well, it's wonderful. And yes, I think you spotted an incredible story. And I was so sad at the end, which, we do spoilers, by the way, on this filmmaker.
Yeah,
on the
spoiler alert.
Chat. These are spoiler alerts. We make sure, I think, Janice, that Diana was doing spoiler alert when she was posting things on Facebook, on YouTube. Speaking of Janice, what kind of time do we have today? I'm thinking going till 5:15. Is that doable for you, or would you rather I stop at the hour?
No, honestly, that works. I think we have the hour and 15 slated. I would love for everyone on here to give the thumbs up or thumbs down if you guys are good with that time frame. So, sounds good. Looks like we're all on board.
Great. I just found that when we were limited to an hour, it sometimes feels a little, we don't get full. Although I could ask you guys questions forever, but that's, another thing, because we all could talk with each other forever, as you know. So now, Robyn, thank God we have a little bit of comedic, relief here.
Yeah.
Talk to us about, and the many things, again, please don't give yourself short shrift, the many things you did on the film, name of your film, what it's about, and what inspired you.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Robyn Paris, and my short is Fruitless. It's a dark comedy about a 40-something-year-old woman who goes to drastic lengths to join the clique of young moms that meet outside her bedroom window. So I was the writer, director, and star of the film. I wore a lot of hats. I guess for me, I really wanted to explore a dark female character, kind of a complex female character, and explore motherhood as a club. So the concept of motherhood as a club that you're either in or you're out. There's no halfway, and a character who desperately wants to be in that club and isn't. I have 2 kids myself, and as my kids are aging, I find myself missing sometimes, like having young kids and having that sort of new time in your life when everything is new and you're discovering what it means to be a mother and have this new kind of thing in your life. And so I guess the inspiration for me was some of the feelings of like, I wish I could, even though I am a mom, I wish I could be back in that club again of like a young mom when everything's new. I mean, now I'm seasoned and my kids are 15 and 12, and it's great. There's other new adventures with them, but it's not the same as the young mom thing with the babies and all that. And I mean, I have a career as well, but I just with a lot of friends and who have kids and who don't have kids, I just feel like there's a lot of very, very complex emotions around motherhood. And I wanted to do something that was funny and allowed women to be wrong and dark and not sweet about motherhood. And this film is not sweet.
No, but it is funny. All right. Have I missed anybody? I don't think so. That's one nice thing about going in the order of the boxes. So I have a quick question for each of your films, and then a more general question again that will apply to everybody. Okay, with Dance Till Dawn. So were you inspired? This is kind of a two-part question. Were you inspired by Moulin Rouge in terms of deciding that you were going to place it in the past, securely in the past by the whole look of it, and then have a song that you created that is a modern song? And then the other question attached to that is, how did you come up with the palette and look of the film? I mean, his green bow tie and, all those colorful. So those are my questions for you.
Those are great questions. I wasn't particularly looking at Moulin Rouge, although, I mean, I love Baz Luhrmann, and the thing you mentioned about the anachronistic modern music placed in a period piece, I mean, that was something I had planned on doing. I was actually more thinking about Jay-Z's music in The Great Gatsby. So yeah, similar principle though. And I guess what inspired me to write that, it was that I was really researching the Ziegfeld Midnight Frolic, particularly Burt Williams, Marion Davies, all these people of the time, and just thinking about their lives and how they, crossed paths and intertwined. That was something that I wanted to explore. So you mentioned the color thing. I'm so glad you noticed that. In the scene in the dressing room, when you see, our much more handsome than William Randolph Hearst character. He, has this like pale mint, not mint green, but like a light spring green bow tie, which matches the jewel that he puts on my character. And so, yeah, there was this idea of him putting the color onto her and then this, stuff happening. So yeah, there are plays of color and different little things that are signifiers throughout the aesthetics of it.
Yeah, I loved that aspect of it. It just added so much to the flavor, of the film and the glitz feeling of the film, so that was fabulous. So Matt, you did touch on a lot of this, but one of my questions is that moment of mortality for your main character. I mean, he's not the character, but I often think of them as characters nonetheless. For Adam, your guy, that moment of mortality, talk about that a little bit more. What kind of thoughts? Now, just to again remind you all, he had fallen a great height from a cliff, and he was very injured, and it was extremely cold, and there was every possibility that if no one found him, he would die. So that's where we're at that moment in the film, if you haven't yet seen it. So what were some of those thoughts going through his mind at that moment, Matt?
Well, Adam outlines the experience in great detail, and I was reminded, like, I'm sitting in Montrose, Colorado in my backyard, and the sun was kind of coming around this where I'm sitting right here. And there was this miraculous moment. Like Adam, because he's a friend of mine, had told me that story probably, 5 or 6 times prior to pre-production even started. And then, in the course of production for the film, he had told the story several times dispassionately and wasn't super emotional. But the day we shot you know, kind of that cornerstone part. We got a bunch of B-roll of Adam in his backyard, which is an awesome backyard with his kids, with a tree house.
Oh yeah, that was so great.
Yeah, and they were playing, and then we interviewed Adam with his boys on his lap and his wife next to him, and we kind of talked about some, you know, family impacts and other stuff. And then we sat Adam down and we said, okay, now you're really telling the story. Like, take us through. So we went through that morning. We went through him climbing up the top of the mountain and then him falling. And, you know, he kind of paused a little bit, and then he started exploring that headspace of where he was at. And the sun just happened to move through the trees and bathed his face in this angelic light. He just started weeping. It was the first time he had got super emotional. And I started crying. My crew started crying. We're all just weeping as he's telling the story, because what he had talked about was he had had a really good life. He had had a rewarding life. He'd been a teacher. He felt like he had changed kids' lives. He had seen the world and taught abroad with his wife. And like he said, he didn't have any regrets. But the one thing that was just tearing him up and breaking his heart was he had a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And he said, those boys should not go through life without a dad. And like, if I can do anything, even when my arm's broken and my leg broken and my face caved in, if there's anything I can do to get back to my boys, I'm going to do it. And about that time, 2 rafters just happened to be rafting by, and he started yelling, help me, help me. And it turns out they were wilderness first responders. And I mean, you know, regardless of your faith, I'm agnostic myself, but it's just so many different things had to happen for all these kind of things to coalesce for him to survive. And then for him to be back teaching in the classroom 2.5 months later, it was just crazy.
Yeah, it really felt, it really felt like they were just the lining up of various aspects. And it again, no matter where you are at in terms of, is there a greater power? Is there not a greater power? There certainly felt like there were things working in conjunction with each other. It was quite extraordinary. Thank you.
I have a question. Did his answer change to his student before and after that happened?
You know, we interviewed the student as part of the film, and I actually interviewed the kid that asked him that. And it's really cool because, like, in some ways, Adam is such a down-to-earth guy that he's just like, you know, this happened. And I mean, like, even now, like, his center is his kids. Like, I want to go grab beers with him on Friday, but he's always camping with his boys, which makes perfect sense because that's the most important thing in his life. Like, you know, it's entirely centered around that. And I mean, he was kind of a guy of faith, but I don't know that, you know, completely shaped his ideology and who he was. But like, you know, I think the way that his answer would change would be just, you know, find those things that are important in your life and absolutely cling to them. And like, I think in the time of COVID and in the modern political environment, it's like, you got to find what's important and really cling to it. So that's a great question.
It's a good answer too. It's so great. And thank you for Sara for asking that. And all of you, if you find when I ask someone a question, if you also have a follow-up question you want to ask, unmute yourself at that moment and then ask the question, and that would be great. So for Alina, one of the things that I really was struck by was the look of the film. It was so, and now I know, is one of you, I know director, writer, but did you also have a DP who was a different person? So I would imagine it was in conjunction between, I know how collaborative that experience is. I work very closely with my DP. And I just realized I did it again, Janice. I didn't talk about my film. Okay, so after, I enjoy doing this so that I forget that I'm also a filmmaker on this chat. So, okay, I'll talk about it after. So that look was so atmospheric, and it brought you in the dark tones and the costumes and it brought you in. So how did the three of you work together in creating that look?
I could tell you, Rami is very specific. it's a collaboration, but the man has a lot more imagination than what was on the page. So I will let you answer that because
Okay.
you
And
really
very often it's the director's eye that does work closely with that cinematographer.
Yeah.
Well, here's how it happened. Basically, after we work on the story together, and Nora writes the script, and I take the script and start like watching it basically. And as I'm watching it, I try to
in your mind.
Yeah, in my mind, of course. Like it's not made yet, so of course. So in my mind, I start like basically writing the shots, like from beginning to end. Although the film itself is not intended to be that. It's not intended to be staged, but everything was carefully and meticulously pre-designed on paper as a shot list. And once we decided on the DP, while I was doing the shot list, then we started working together. But I was informing him about the shots specifically because I was going for a very specific atmosphere, the way how you put it. And he was the one who designed the, I mean, obviously we talked about that, but he designed the lighting, and he was the operator, of course, like the DP is the operator. And I basically walked him through every single shot by shot, like from beginning to end. And the look, when it comes to the lighting, was very much inspired by how I grew up as a child of war. And it's very much like the light of the candle and a lot of darkness.
Like Rembrandt, type of.
It's just a lot of darkness, and the light of the candle is the one that's controlling the lighting, basically.
Yeah.
And it was something that's interesting because the film, the way how it starts, it's pretty dark in the Warsaw Ghetto, and as we go and to Alina's mother, it's a little brighter because obviously in the Warsaw Ghetto there was no electricity per se, and people were like hustling and trying to get whatever lights available.
The Nazis cut off the resources more in the ghetto than outside.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
And with the mom, it's just a little bit of hope and their space. It's very simple as an idea, but it works very well with the story of the film. And when it comes to the costume, we just had like a great costume designer. She did it from A to Z. Like she was just like the nerdiest.
It's a compliment from us because we're nerds.
Yeah, the most fabulous costume designer I've ever worked with.
Yeah, we love her.
She was great.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, it was very effective. All right, I should talk about my film. My film is called Entwined. It's in one of the drama shorts series called, I never remember, Manifestations of Love. Thinking, Janice going, yeah. It's the story of a man and a woman who are standing in front of a painting at a gallery. They're in their 60s. He's African American. She is white. And they're drawn to this painting, both of them. And at one moment they look at each other and realize that they know each other from almost 50 years ago when they had been boyfriend and girlfriend in high school until racist bullies had scared them apart. So this is the first time that they've seen each other since. There are lingering feelings. There's unresolved things from the past. And so this is essentially their encounter. We were lucky. I was the writer, director, and producer, and we were lucky to get Michael Dorn to star in it. If any of you are Star Trek fans, he plays the character of Worf in all of the Star Trek television series and films. Now, of course, Worf is covered in, Klingon makeup. So you do not see that underneath all that is an extremely handsome man. So we were just really grateful to get him. One of the reasons we got him was because something similar, he said, had happened to him, that he had seen an old lover from the past who it was their parents who broke them up because it was a interracial relationship. So I just find myself inspired in general by differences between people and how we have to get past it. It's as simple as that. It's just absurd that we are still dealing with that, and yet we are. So that's where that story came from for me. All right. So Ben, so now I haven't seen it, as I said, but one of the questions I did have was that I did notice that it in the little blurb about it, that it was part of this series of almost famous people, but they also wrote that it was almost famous people who did not regret that they hadn't become famous. And I'm assuming that that was the case in every one of the people who will be featured in that series, but was that the case with Dwight? And if he did not regret it, was it because of that second career that he ended up pursuing? Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We didn't set out to find people who were happy anyway, but that's what we found.
Yeah.
And in Dwight's case, I don't know if regret is the right word, but I think he has a lot of feelings about it and about the way he was treated. Yeah. And I think I don't know if I would call it regret, but I think that one thing I find interesting is how everybody kind of finds their way in talking at length. I do really long interviews, like 7, 8. I think Dwight's interview was like 11 hours over 2 days. People find their kind of core purpose, and very rarely is being well known very important to people when it comes down to it. And it's something that we perceive as important. It might even be something that we're envious of other people. They're well known, or they're famous, or they've won awards or whatever. But I think that's one thing that's really interesting about talking to these people is it doesn't loom large in their life. And in many ways they seem happier than the people who were successful and were famous.
Hey, I got a question for Ben.
Yes.
So, how do you contrast that as an artist and filmmaker? You're trying to find an audience. You're trying to find, as many eyes as you can. So, how do you contrast that dichotomy, of that character, but then you as a filmmaker artist, that's your motive?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if my motive is finding an audience as much as it is doing right by the subject. I see my job really as not really putting my opinion out there, or my perspective out there, as much as I am making the subject an amazing storyteller and giving them the music and the cinematography and the sound design and the editing that their story deserves. So when one of the films got a few million views on YouTube about the singer Kim Hill, who was in the Black Eyed Peas, and then she quit before they became really famous. And I see that way more as a win, for Kim, and that her story gets told. I'm satisfied, but especially with the way we make these films where the person is directly addressing the audience to the camera, I'm kind of a matchmaker between the subject and the audience more than anything.
Oh, I love that term, matchmaker. And since most of us probably haven't seen it, what was the reason that he did not ultimately, I'm assuming racism was involved, but what was the reason he was ultimately not made to be an astronaut?
Yeah, just seemingly, I mean, I wasn't there, but seemingly it was entirely to do with the color of his skin. You know, Chuck Yeager, who is, you know, kind of seen as this American hero, does not come off well in Ed's memory. At the same time, I think it also needs to be acknowledged that it was still steep chances. I mean, I think there was a couple hundred people who went through the training that he did, and only a couple dozen that were selected to go into space. So it was still steep odds, but what was interesting about Ed was he was top of his class in almost every category. But it was also political, right? John F. Kennedy and RFK had pulled strings and put pressure on the program to have an African-American candidate. You know, it was right around when Kennedy was assassinated that Dwight's career started to fall apart. And I don't think that was a coincidence.
No, it probably wasn't. Thank you so much, Ben. That is so fascinating. And I did have a very quick follow-up for Rami. Can you, you had mentioned that you were brought up with war. So where was it that you grew up, and what was that war you were dealing with?
Yeah, I was born in the middle of the Lebanese Civil War back in the early 80s. But the problem is that after the war ended, a series of like conflicts that kept like coming up through the 90s, through the 2000s now. It's just, I mean, we had like golden ages of like years of like just peaceful and a lot of fun, and a lot of pubs and being drunk and all that. but at the same time, it's the whole world is like facing a lot of conflicts at the moment. So I don't know if I'm a little vaccinated, I guess.
Speaking of, yes.
But it's unfortunate that at some point, it's really unfortunate though, that you get used to conflicts. You wish that you would reach an island that is as close as possible to a peaceful place.
Right.
But I don't know. We're human.
Yeah.
That's the human nature, I guess. I don't know.
And we were beating each other up as you know, Cro-Magnon. So yeah, thank you. Isabel, I wanted to ask you, let me see, I wrote these little things down, so give me a moment. You know, what's interesting about your film is that it seems to not only talk about sort of a rite of passage between friends, but it seems to imply that there may be a burgeoning attraction between the two boys. Was I right in picking up on that? And if so, that moment at the very end where the one boy, after sort of repudiating his friend, he then basically stands up for him, or do you know what I'm saying? Was that about the moment that had happened between them and the fear that had engendered for both boys?
Yeah, so I think that that's something a lot of people pick up on in the film. For us creating the film, for us, it was really about intimacy, and intimacy within friendships, specifically friendships between young men and boys. And, you know, when, you know, there's, unfortunately, a lot of times there's ultimately this point where intimacy no longer becomes acceptable to the larger society. And so, yeah, in that final moment when, you know, Jacob and Isaac kind of have that resolution, it really was about creating a youthful version of masculinity where love and intimacy and friendship are able to prevail. within the circumstance. So that was definitely a big focus in the film and a part of our process.
I love that, because I did go to that place that probably most people will go to watching it, but I love that it actually wasn't about that. It was about redefining masculinity, which is something that obviously we need to do in our society. So I applaud you for that. And yes, the touch between them is simply a touch of caring between two individuals. But the other boy did seem to interpret it the other way, and which again was sort of the eyes of society, or even the eyes of the audience looking at it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for us also, we wanted there to be that question, because maybe it is, you know, something more between them, maybe it's not. But at the end of the day, that's not the point, and they'll figure it out later. But for them, it's just, you know, about maintaining that closeness and being able to hold on to that closeness for longer.
Right. I like that. Yeah, that's lovely. So for Tending Clouds, I found myself very curious about the mother in Tending Clouds.
Yeah.
I was not entirely clear as to what the mother had actually done. What I felt like, or what I came away with, was that she had essentially sold her daughter into that abusive relationship. Am I right in interpreting it that way? And if so, what were her, not that one would ever necessarily know, but what do you see as her motivations?
Well, yes, to answer your question, she did sell her child. And that's really sadly a norm in that culture, and that's just what happened. But because of the way Rexmai, who's the main character, her relationship with her mom and moving back and kind of being able to see her again, it made it a little bit complicated, to where I didn't even have her mom in there in my first cut, because I didn't even want any, because she has to deal with it. It's her life, and I didn't want to like create something that would make turmoil or drama or chaos in her life with her family, who she's like kind of trying to mend and kind of trying to create boundaries with still, because both of her parents are still like asking her and her new husband for financial support still. So, which is like absurd,
pretty awful. Yes.
but that's what, when I was interviewing her at one point, because I knew she had testified in America against the American pedophile when she was like 11 years old, and then I was interviewing her at another point, and she was like, yeah, I testified to help my mom get out. And I was like, wait, you testified to help your mom get out? And that, because she was a child, and she was like, it was her mom, you know?
It was her mom. Yeah.
Such a twisted like thing that, you know, that where it's still her parents.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was definitely a hurdle to try to like do, but I wanted to do it tactfully and not be like, she sold her, because I don't know if her mom's ever really going to watch it or anything, or at some point she's probably going to know about it, but I just didn't want it to be something that was so blatant, like she sold her daughter, and you know, something like that. So, out of respect for Rexmai.
Yeah, it's difficult when you're doing a documentary and it's real people involved and real families involved. Some of those issues become really dicey. She, at the end, I mean, we know that she's going to have to re-testify. They give the reasons, the various international, you know, rules that make it that she has to re-testify, as I understood it, but she doesn't get to, because of COVID happening at that point. So have they literally delayed that re-testifying until things are open again?
Yeah, the original one was at the middle of March, and that obviously got canceled. That was right at the start of it all. And then it was actually September, I think last week, that it was supposed to happen again, but then it got delayed till August of 2021. So just delay it again. So which that seems a little bit more realistic as far as maybe that'll happen, but I'm sure the court system is getting backed up but whatever. So we'll see.
Yeah. It's very, very, it was both a troubling and an inspiring story all at once. It really was, just how someone can go through what she went through and yet still be such a strong force for others.
Yeah, and I think that's why we wanted to focus on her, was because she's just so fun and spunky, and she's moved back just to like help girls like her, kids like that could potentially go through what she went through as a child, and she's just always smiling and happy and fun, and like she's definitely she's doesn't want to be told what to do, and it's hilarious. So
she was also, I loved the character, the mama character, the her substitute mother character, who was part of the program to help her, who was just a lovely character. For those of you who haven't gotten a chance to see your fellow films, I really recommend it. Perhaps, I don't know, Janice, whether the possibility is open for people to share links with each other, or at least we all have each other's emails. So I encourage everyone to communicate with each other regardless. And we still have a chance to see these films. The festival is not over yet. So keep that in mind.
Wait, I have a question for Joel.
Yes.
Sorry,
Oh,
I'm
good.
asking questions.
Go ahead.
So I know, like, making films, you always like, there's something that you find out that you're like, wow, I had no idea that was a thing. What did you have, like, one of those aha moments making this film?
No, I think it was almost the opposite, because I knew all of these details about her life, but it was kind of like being sensitive to what I'm actually going to share. And that's why the word sex is never even said once in the entire documentary, except for there's an actual, like, a court trial section where the lawyer says the word sex. But I didn't want it to be sensationalized and about, like, these details. So I knew all that stuff, but definitely when the trial was postponed, I took advantage of, like, that, like, timing. Took advantage is a bad word, but bad phrase. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I knew that was important, but I didn't know how big it was going to actually be. You know, it was like, oh, it'll be like a couple months. And so that was really the thing that was new information.
Mm-hmm. And then what did your team look like? Because I know doing an issue like this as a man is like, you have a very different sensitivity than, a woman might have.
Yeah, well, I've become close friends with Rexmai, and I would always, like, ask her. I would send her, like, cuts and things that I'm working on and be like, what do you think of this? Is this okay? Are you fine with this? And the co-producer is a woman too. And so she helps temper that side of it too, and helps bring a lot of that I, stuff that I lack. So, yeah.
Although I sort of imagine you're a pretty sensitive male. So
I had a follow-up question to that too, Joel. Like, in terms of process, did you do, like, a transcription? You mentioned the word sex only shows up one time. Did you, like, go through your transcripts? And the reason I ask, like, with my film, I didn't want to proselytize, so I wanted to see, like, every time somebody said Jesus or God. So I went back through all the transcription to know how many times that word was said. So that's kind of where my mind went. So.
Yeah, we had translations, and definitely more details and stuff that I could have shared and could have put in there. But I had done a documentary in 2012 that was about the awareness of child sex trafficking in Cambodia, and I didn't want to do the same thing. I feel like the awareness is over, and I just didn't want to make something that was, people were like, ooh, details. I wanted it to be about Rexmai and her story and her, like, being an overcoming spirit.
Yeah, it was, again, just a stunning piece. Talking again to Sara about a little bit fierce. Two brief questions, one of which is, you kind of did everything. You were director, DP, editor, and you said it was your student thesis, I believe. So what was it like wearing all of those hats? And what college were you working out of again?
So that was my thesis for the Vermont College of Fine Arts, but that was my second master's. I've been working in the industry for 20 years now. I just started teaching full-time, and apparently a master's is not enough to apply for full-time tenure, so I had to go back.
Yes, I've had the same problem. Right.
Yeah. So the Vermont, okay, so if anyone needs to go back to school, the Vermont College of Fine Arts is amazing. It's a low residency program, so you go up 1 week every semester, or you used to. Now it's all online. You have like 1 week residency at the start of each semester, and then you just get an advisor and you work on your own projects for 2 years. So it's actually like really great. A lot of people who are doing that program are teachers or college professors. And I mean, I've been doing everything for so long that like I started I'm an editor. I started as a producer editor. Then I was editing and I would start getting other people's footage. I'm like, this is garbage. You're a camera, you're a DP. Okay, cool. I can shoot better than this. So I was like running the production, the production departments for a bunch of think tanks in DC, and yeah, doing everything wasn't that hard. And it gave me access that I couldn't have had otherwise. Like I have like these really intimate moments with the family because I spent like, there were times where I'd go over to their house and just hang out and not roll anything. Right. And for this, Madison was 9 when I started filming with her and 11 when I stopped filming with them. And a lot of it was just like these moments that you can't get if you have a crew. You can't get if you have other people around. So, yeah, it would have been nice. I had one of my students cut the trailer, so that was nice. Another student I had make the website. But other than that, everything else, I was just, cutting as I went along and trying to keep a handle on all the footage. We had 22 shoot days, so it wasn't too much.
The royal we, as in the queen who says we. As a fellow multi-hatter, I sympathize with your reasons. For me, I started out as a playwright and have been a playwright for much of my career, and then kind of got dragged into film. That's a whole other story. But then once I was in film, I began co-producing, and then after a while I began producing, and then I said, you know what, I think I could direct, and then, so my last 3 short films, I've done 6, I've directed. So yes, I know about that, and there's something about wearing all those hats, for those of the rest of you who are also doing that makes you feel like, okay, if this fails, it's on me.
Mm-hmm. I will say that now they're at the point where
I'm going to do the other side of that first. The other side of that is, if it succeeds, it's also on me. Mm-hmm. So I think what it is it's your vision. It really is your vision. And I think that's the advantage, even though it's tons of work, of wearing lots of hats. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Sarah, you were saying.
Yeah, sometimes it's just easier. It's easier for me to just grab my camera and go shoot when like I got a text. But now that it's done, and I'm like, oh, it'd be really great if there are other people involved who like we're spending time and money trying to get this out into the world, because I'm burnt out.
Well, now you're at that marketing phase, and that's a whole other, hat. That's yet another hat, as again, all of you know too well. Any rate, great. That led me to the second question, which I imagine happens to a lot of documentary filmmakers. How close did you get to the mom and to little Madison, and how hard was it for you and again, spoiler alert, when she passed away?
So I spent about a good year telling my best friend, I'm like, I'm not making a film about a little girl dying. That's not what I'm doing. She's like,
and you weren't, it wasn't.
Okay, because I'm pretty sure that's exactly what you're doing. Like I was watching Free Solo on a plane, and I'm like, oh man, I can't imagine making a film where your like best friend and subject could die at any point. And then I'm like, oh wait, that's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. Cool.
But it didn't feel like that, really, Sarah. It didn't feel like a film about someone dying. It felt like someone living.
And that's what choices. It was. Yeah, and that's what it was about. If I had children, there's no way we could have made this film. Absolutely not. But I got pretty close with them. Madison was texting me, and she like had her list of people she texted every morning, being like, "Hey, what's up?" And I think it wasn't until pretty close to the end that everyone was like, "Okay, she's going to die," because until she died in May, and up until like January, it was still like there was still some hope.
Yeah.
So that was tough. And I did realize that as I was making the film, like when she was doing great, I'm like, yes, let's make this film. Awesome. And then when she was not doing great, like right after her surgery or something, I was like, this is awful. I'm done. I don't want to make this film anymore. I'm done. And it took me a few months to realize that that's what was kind of leading how I felt about making the film in the process. So it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions throughout. That's for sure.
I can imagine. Thank you so much. And Robyn, what's interesting about your film is how obsessed your character is. I mean, obsessed, to the point of embarrassment for those of us who are women watching it, going, oh my God, to what lengths will she not go? So I love that aspect of it. My question is that kind of what you wanted to put across, being that it's a dark comedy? I mean, you said a badly behaved woman. Is that obsession part of it? And the second half of that question is, I did feel watching most of it that what she was obsessed about was actually having a baby, getting to have a baby before it's too late. But from how you were describing it, it sounds like maybe it was much more about being in the community of women who had babies. So clarify that for me as well.
Yes, I mean, I feel like it was a little bit of both, but I definitely wanted to set up that she very much wanted to be in a community of women having babies. She's always spying on these ladies meeting outside her window. In terms of the obsession, I thought it would be funny to take it to comical lengths. So she's trying to seduce these various men. And for me, I'm a big fan of Fleabag and Dead to Me and shows like Camping. So I love the dark comedy of the women behaving badly.
Right.
Because I feel like, I mean, it's great to see women superheroes and strong female role models, but I feel like men have, like in Fargo, and men get to play a lot of dark characters and very nuanced, like everything from hero to anti-hero, and women haven't had a chance to explore the anti-hero quite as much. And so with my comedy, I find myself liking to explore kind of like misbehaving women. And that's what I was doing with her and her obsession, and just trying to find the comedy in very like small moments, because I think that's life. Like there's a lot of comedy everywhere you look.
Yeah,
you can find it every day.
Exactly. Now, do you at the last moment she finally decides that she's going to put in a false baby bump, and spoiler alert, and she's going to go out and join the women. But what the thought that came to me is, what happens when she doesn't give birth? Did you think about what happens after?
Yes, and I outlined basically like a second episode to this, if this were to be an episodic show. And I think I have some funny stuff set up with Bob coming back, who's one of the guys we meet in this short, and confronting her when she's out to lunch with these women with the fake baby bump, and then him thinking it's his baby, and there being like a bunch of miscommunications there. But yeah, I mean, basically the shit's going to hit the fan for her eventually.
Oh,
she's going to be discovered.
You seem to be setting that up so well, so I was curious about that. I'm glad you're thinking of following it up. We have about 5 minutes left, and I will just ask if anyone actually has a question for me and my film. If you don't, then I have one very brief question to finish up with. So.
Dale, I also want to remember to take a photo. before we
Oh yeah,
close up.
yeah. So we'll do a screenshot of everybody. So the last question, and it's you can answer very simply. What's next? What's your next project? For me, I'm working on a multitude of things. I just finished a full-length play. I'm still playwriting, and I'm working on a potential pilot for a television series that we will be pitching. And I've got a screenplay that I'm working on. So that's where I'm at. Once we get back to production, I can think about producing again, but right now it's about writing. So Ayesha, what's next for you?
For me, I have a short that I'm acting in coming up next month, so that's great. And
Cool.
For my own projects, I'm finishing, well, I'm not quite to the finish line on a feature script that takes place in the 1990s. And I don't want to give away too much, but yeah, it's my baby. So that's going to be my next big project.
Excellent, excellent. And Nora and Rami, what's next?
Yeah, we're trying to, like, it's exactly like you, basically. We're trying to, it's very much like a writing phase, and we're trying to work on both TV and feature films at the same time. Yeah, we have an older short that we've done that we're adapting into a feature. Hopefully we're reaching its last draft. And yeah, like that's what we're doing.
Excellent, excellent. And Ben?
I'm making more Almost Famous films.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to send one today, actually. I'll be here late tonight sending another cut. So I'm working on more. I fell in
Do you
love
have
with
a lot of the interviews already done, in other words, and in the can, so that you're able to be in the editing phase?
Yeah, we're lucky in the style. The style of these films is very heavy on the interview, and it's a lot easier to perform during coronavirus, these interviews, because basically you can set everything up, build a wall, like a plastic wall that divides the crew member and the subject.
Yes.
And it's a relatively safe process. So it's that plus archival material. So we were able to shoot 6 of them.
Oh, that's fabulous that you've been able to move forward during COVID. That's wonderful.
And Ben, is that for the Times?
Yeah.
For the Times, yeah.
You guys are on the side of the Angels, man. New York Times.
Yeah. Agree with you on that one.
Just want to say, I love that series so much. So if you guys haven't seen it, I've been following. I love it so much. So I encourage everybody to go check it out. They're really extraordinary stories.
Yeah, I have seen some of it. I've seen some of it too, and it's just wonderful. So Isabel, next for you.
Yeah, so I'm currently working on a 5-part podcast series with a producer in LA. I just wrapped up writing. We're actually doing a full script for it, and I'm diving into the recording and editing process. So looking forward to lots more of that over the next couple months.
Excellent, excellent. Joel.
Well, right now a lot of energy is put on tending clouds and the festival circuit and all that, but the next thing I'm doing is definitely going to be a comedy because I'm done with the serious shit. So
I know the feeling. Yeah.
It's too much, but other than that, just teaching my children from remote learning.
Oh gosh, yes. And my DP has 3 small children at home, and he's going just a tad crazy. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I have 4, so they keep me quiet.
Even crazier. Oh goodness. And he even said to me once, recently, he goes, "I'm not even sure I'm a good dad anymore." That's how he's feeling. Oh, I felt so bad for him. My son is in his 20s and out of the house, so I'm okay. Sara.
I'm teaching at American University in George Mason, and I just applied for a Fulbright in Jordan to teach female filmmakers in Amman. So
wow,
hopefully I get that. I can go to Jordan for a year.
That's very cool. And by the way, I teach writing at various conferences, Santa Barbara, San Miguel de Allende, and I applied for a job to teach at a university, and I was told, even though I had a master's in literature, that I had to have an MFA. So yes, I'm same position. So I don't know if maybe I'll do what you did.
They have a really good writing program at BCFN.
Yeah, I'll check in with you if I decide to do it. So Robyn.
Sorry. Yes, I have a couple of projects that I'm in pre-production on. I have a series called The Room Actors, Where Are They Now? I have 8 episodes. It's out on YouTube. I'm making 2 more of those in November. So
I'm sorry, the which actors?
It's called The Room Actors, Where Are They Now? So it stars the actors from the cult film The Room.
Got it.
And so it's a comedy. It's a broad comedy. And then I'm doing another short in January about misbehaving women, this time in 18th century colonial America.
Oh, I love it.
So they're trying to do crazy things like learn to read and crazy things like that.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. Have you seen the series The Great? Have you been watching The Great?
No, but I've heard
you need
things.
to watch it. No, Robyn, you have to watch it. It's, I don't remember if it's on Hulu or what, maybe Janice, I don't know, but it's about Catherine the Great, and talk about a woman who learns to misbehave to save the country. It's great. You would love it. And it's very dark humor.
I'll check it out.
And Matt, I'm calling on you last because your box moved for me. So now you're the last box.
Yeah.
So what's next for you?
Project I'm working on now. I'm in a necktie. I did my day job. I came from my day job. I was a teacher for about a decade, and now I direct communications for a rural school district in Colorado. And I'm trying to find the personal, professional, artistic boundary between stuff going on at work and like what I can do a film or a nonfiction piece about. But we're kind of a rural agricultural farm town, and we've got a teacher who is transitioning genders, and that's a new thing for us. We've had a couple of kids that have navigated that experience, but we never had a staff member. And so I'm wondering, like, to what degree I have the agency or authority to help that individual tell their story. So like, I'm trying to figure out if that's going to be a nonfiction piece or a short film. So.
God, well, that sounds fabulous. An important story to tell.